Hey there, hope you're having a fantastic day in your neck of the woods. This is Michael Does Life, and as you can see here, as we continue to talk about this all-new upcoming edition of Resident Evil 3, Resident Evil 2 Remake, this all-new edition, ships 4 million copies. Now, it doesn't necessarily say sold, however, with that said, nonetheless, Resident Evil 2, this all-new edition, is a success, and that's only encouraging news for us Resident Evil 3 fans that are clamoring for an all-new edition of Resident Evil 3. You know what I mean? In addition to that news, Capcom has also released a video called Resident Evil 2 Roundtable Part 1, where the developers candidly discuss the behind-the-scenes nature of developing this all-new edition of Resident Evil 2. Now, the reason why I bring this up is because this, as you can see, is only part 1. Maybe, just maybe, and this might be a bit of a stretch, but maybe, just maybe, in part 2, they may very well hint at the future of Resident Evil. Let's keep our fingers crossed. Oh, and by the way, the comments on this roundtable video are all about an all-new upcoming edition of Resident Evil 3. Resident Evil 3 Remake is honestly around the corner. Resident Evil 3 Remake, Nemesis, Dino Crisis Remake on Resident Evil Engine, or RE Engine. Resident Evil 3 Remake, please. This is exactly what we need if we want this all-new upcoming edition of Resident Evil 3 to come to fruition. We have to stay strong, we have to be bold, and we have to let Capcom know, as we are clearly doing here, that this is what we are clamoring for. Also in the news, folks, as you can see, and some of you might know this already, Resident Evil 0, 1, and 4 are coming to the Nintendo Switch eShop digitally as individual digital downloads on May 21st. And I think this is kind of a testing ground for Capcom to see how these titles, just to kind of see how Resident Evil does on the Nintendo Switch, because hey, if these do very well, Resident Evil 0, 1, and 4, that may very well mean that Capcom could consider porting this all-new edition over to the Nintendo Switch at some point in the future. And maybe even this all-new upcoming edition of Resident Evil 3. We'll have to wait and see. So about a week or so ago, Capcom did a survey. I did a video on this, but the survey is now over, unfortunately. But I want to use this opportunity to kind of do our own survey. Because, hey, you never know. Capcom could be watching. So down below, if you want to, leave your feedback on what they could potentially improve upon in an all-new upcoming edition of Resident Evil 3. Alright, so here's my feedback. I want them to improve hardcore difficulty in this all-new upcoming edition of Resident Evil 3. I want this mode to really not only cater to the old school fans, but also present the player with a challenge that is not going to hold your hand. This is only for hardcore players, you know what I mean? So how do they improve it? Well, here are my ideas. Implement fixed camera angles, okay? Now, the reason why they would do this is because this presents a challenge to the player. You're not 100% aware of your surroundings. You don't necessarily know at all times what you're looking at or what you're shooting, so therefore, it is a challenge. The next is there is no safe room anywhere in the game. Enemies can follow you even where the typewriter may be. Okay, because, you know, in this all-new edition of Resident Evil 2, it was so silly at times when Mr. X was chasing you, and then you would go into the save room, and then it was like, oh, I have a moment to breathe. No, in this all-new upcoming edition of Resident Evil 3, in this hardcore difficulty mode, I want there to be no safe room. You are vulnerable at all times. And last but not least, no pausing, meaning if you look at your map or your inventory, the game does not pause. And that would be great because, well, you're always going to have to kind of think quickly. You don't have that moment to breathe. So that's how you improve hardcore mode, at least in my opinion, in this all-new upcoming edition of Resident Evil 3. So thank you so kindly for tuning in as we continue to talk about this all-new upcoming edition of Resident Evil 3. It's a really prime opportunity to talk about this all-new upcoming edition of Resident Evil 3 because it's nice to keep the momentum going. It's nice to kind of corral the Resident Evil community together and push really hard and push really strong to let Capcom know that this, folks, is indeed what we are clamoring for. Your support is much appreciated, and I do thank you so kindly. And I'll see you guys soon with more information on this all-new upcoming edition of Resident Evil 3. Take care.